All right, guys, we ready? Those of you guys at home, you guys can see my screen. Give me a thumbs up if you can. What's up, Rob? All right, guys, let's kick it off. Today's training, guys, pricing homes in a shifting market. What inspired me to do this training today is that we got a lot of listings coming up right now. There are a lot of listings that are canceling right now. I think I looked up the stats. They were like, just in the Santa Clara County in the last 30 days, there were like over 150 or so listings that canceled or got pulled off the market. If we expand that into the whole entire Bay Area, there's probably several hundred every single month that are canceling, right? Meaning that the sale did not go through for whatever reason. They're expiring, sellers are changing their mind. And I think a big part of that is just because agents aren't setting the right expectations with the sellers, right? Or sellers are going into the sale with the wrong expectations, right? Or not fully understanding the market, or not realizing that the market is shifting. And it's not all shifting in the same rate. There's certain neighborhoods that are still hot, certain neighborhoods that are shifting more towards a balanced market, certain neighborhoods that are shifting more towards a buyer's market, right? So it really is a moving target right now, guys. So the more that you know this stuff, and we'll get into it a little bit more, the more successful you're going to be right now if you are working with sellers. And then I also think if you're working with buyers, it's good to understand this stuff as well, because then you can educate your buyers like, hey, this is what's going on, right? When you see this property listed for this price or this price, let's go ahead and look at the data. Let's look at what's happening so we can make the right offer, right? Feel free to stop me if you guys have any questions. I'm going to kind of roll through some talking points. And then if we have enough time, I actually want to pull up a property and kind of walk you through how I would look at the comps and how I would price it as well. Oh, too fast. Okay, so the mindset, guys. First thing we got to realize is that, like I said, the market is shifting, right? Like there's no sugarcoating that. You know, and there's various reasons why, right? The economy, the rates, all these different things that are happening. The market is definitely shifting. Shifting doesn't necessarily mean it's a bad thing. It's just not the same market it was a year ago, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, which some people got accustomed to, right? There's some neighborhoods that are cooling off. We've seen that, right? Where there's more inventory, homes are sitting on the market longer, certain types of properties, right? Especially the townhouses and condos right now are sitting on the market longer as well. They're not moving as fast. And there are still neighborhoods that are moving pretty fast, right? Like Sunnyvale, for example, is freaking moving pretty fast. You know, Los Gatos, Palo Alto, some of those higher end neighborhoods are moving fast as well. So we got to understand that. So the goal today is really to learn how to analyze comps, how to also get feedback from other agents so that you can use this as ammunition when you're pricing your home and when you're also talking to your sellers, right? Because we want to price homes to sell, not just sit, right? It's great, like you sign a listing and we're all gung-ho, we're all high-fiving, hey, listing signed, right? That's just the first step. We got to get this one sold, right? Which is really where the battle is at, right? And then I want to remind you guys and that pricing is a strategy. It's not wishful thinking. And it's important that you guys relay that to your sellers that, hey, when we're pricing your home, we are pricing it using a strategy. We're not just hoping we get this price or anything like that, right? Because if it's wishful thinking, then you may want to think twice if you're going to take on that listing. Because I would hate for you guys to take on a listing, and we've seen it happen, where you take on a listing, we put time, energy, and money and resources into it, and then the house doesn't sell, and now we're canceling that listing. Now we're out for staging, we're out for photos, inspections, or maybe even the seller invested in that as well. And we wasted a bunch of time, right? Resources, admins, and all that stuff too. And you don't get a paycheck, right? So we don't want to price homes to sit. We want to price them to sell. I think this was a duplicate. So here's the other thing to keep in mind. You're going to have to level up in a shifting market. When the market is shifting, follow me here. You got to get better at certain things. You have to have the ability to understand what's happening, and you have to have the ability to communicate this to your clients, right? Because when the market was really, really hot a couple years ago, when rates were low, and a home would go on the market and it'd get 20 offers and buyers knew they had to pay 50, 100, 200 grand over, it was really, really easy to close a sale. To be honest, you didn't have to be that good of an agent, right? You could be the crappy agent, but just because the market was on your side, things were happening, you were closing deals, you're a top producer, right? You're getting the awards and all that, and you look like a rock star, but really your skill wasn't even being tested, right? Because you could just list the home, and because there was not a lot of inventory and rates were 3%, you know, even if you did a crappy job pricing it or whatever, you got a lot of offers, right? It was just price low, get 20 offers, right? You didn't have to go back to the seller and have them drop their price. You didn't have to have those difficult conversations. So I feel like a lot of the agents who weren't so skilled, that all got covered up and masked in the hot market. But now what's happening is agents' abilities are being exposed right now, right? So you need to level up. If you want to, you know, not just survive, right? We don't just want to survive, right? We're not in survival mode. We want to thrive in this market. We want to crush it. We want to kill it. You have to level up. That means you got to come to training. That means you got to listen to this stuff. You got to study this stuff. You got to be skilled so that you can go out there and have those high level conversations with your clients, right? Because you will be put to the test. Trust me, guys. Questions, comments? Okay. If you have a question, guys, just unmute yourself. Those of you guys that online, or put it in the chat. Okay, so here's some core principles, guys, in a changing market. We got to remember that a home is worth what a ready, willing, and able buyer is willing to pay today. That's what a home is worth. It's not worth what the seller thinks it's worth. It's not what the seller just dictates and throws an arbitrary number out there. Hey, my home's worth 2 million, right? Like, we would love for it to work that way, but it's only worth 2 million if someone's willing to pay 2 million, right? So I think we need to understand that, and we need to use that in our dialogue when we're talking to people. Here's the other thing to keep in mind is that when we're looking at comps, because the traditional way is like, hey, let's look at the last 3 months of comps. And like, that's how we price our property. Well, if the market changed in the last 3 months, you know, the comp that sold 3 months ago was probably listed, you know, 30 or 60 days before that. So when it was priced at that point, the market has already changed. So that comp that's a month old, 2 month old may not be where the market's at today, right? So the solds are showing the past, but the pendings and the actives, those are what's showing what's happening today and right now. So we got to change our strategy of how we're comping out properties. We're not just looking at the solds, right? We're not just trying to come up with a value for an appraiser. We're trying to actually see what's going to move the needle forward right now. So you got to emphasize really what's happening with the pendings and the actives to show where the current momentum is at. The other thing you got to consider, guys, is if,
I just want to kind of, I want to understand so the agent knows what the practice is at that point, right? Because the practice before was look online, look at the MLS, look at the comps.
Yeah.
So now as an agent, what does the agent have to do? What just, are you going to?
Yeah, that's one of the slides.
Jump in.
Yeah, so we're going to get there, guys. What do you have to do, right? So here's the other thing, guys, is if buyers can get more for their money nearby, your listing is going to get skipped, right? If there's more inventory right now, where before maybe there was only one house for sale, but now there's 10 houses, the buyers are comparing your house to the other house. And if that house down the street is bigger, it's nicer, more fixed up, has an extra bedroom, and it's priced lower, well, automatically people are going to skip your property and they're going to go to that one. So us as agents, we need to know what's going on around us and what can someone else buy with that same budget, right? If I have a buyer looking, their budget's 1.5 million. Well, the buyer who's looking at 1.5 million, are they also looking at 1.4? Are they also maybe stretching to 1.6 for the right property? Okay, so you might have a $200,000 swing right there, right? Maybe they came in initially, hey, I want to spend 1.5, but they also may spend 1.4 if it's a better deal, right? So we would be naive to not look at what can you buy right now between 1.4 to 1.6 and just do a search, right? What else is active? And use that as data on how we're going to price our property, right? Like, hey, I can go a neighborhood over and it's just as nice. Schools are overlapping a little bit, but I can get something 100,000 less for a bigger, nicer home. But see, when us as agents, we were just only comping like the 0.25 radius or whatever. and we're missing out that like half a mile down that way, even though it's a different neighborhood, still in the general same area,
Yeah.
I can get a better deal over there.
'Cause that's the way the consumer.
That's the way the consumer sees, right? When they're shopping, right? Anybody ever bought a car? What are you doing, right? You're looking at price, but you're also looking at like, what do you get with that car? Does it have the bells and whistles? Is it fully upgraded? If it's a used car, how many miles does it have? And sometimes you're like, well, I don't really care what brand it is. Like there's maybe 3 or 4 cars I would buy that are within my budget. That's how buyers think, right? So you got to think like the buyer when you're pricing. And then you have to explain that to your seller when you're getting ready to price, right? You have to explain that, right? Because then they won't get it. They're thinking like a seller. They're not thinking like a buyer, right? They're thinking, how do I want all the money, right? They're not thinking, well, put yourself in the buyer's shoes. Okay. If you're overpriced, even slightly, you become the comp that sells the other properties. You're priced at 1.9, but the other home is 1.8. Now you're the reason why people go to the 1.8. See what I'm saying? Right? Because you overpriced yours. And now that one looks like a better deal. So then people skip yours and they go to that one. Right? So being overpriced just a little bit is going to negatively affect you when there's other homes in the area that you can get for cheaper or that are a better deal, right?
Enrique, sorry.
What do you got, man?
Yeah, Enrique, this is very tricky, and I have a listing coming up. I definitely will have a call. But so over listing is tricky because then you become a comp. Under listing is also tricky because buyers are already pulling you down, right? So
Correct.
what should be the strategy? Like, because I had that experience. If we generally the earlier the strategy used to be little bit under list and then attract the traffic so you get more offers and then counter. But now even the agents are smart, right? Like they try to pull you down. So what to do in that case?
Yeah, we're gonna go to that right now in a second. There's no just one straightforward answer. It's gonna be dependent on what's happening in that neighborhood, right? So for different neighborhoods, you could use a different pricing strategy. Before, the strategy was price under market, let the market drive it up. That's not the right strategy anymore. Now it's gonna be like, what's that particular neighborhood doing, right? And then you're gonna have a different pricing strategy depending on where that neighborhood is, how it's moving, right? And now I'm gonna get into that in a second.
Okay.
Great question though, man. Okay, so here's the steps, right, to analyze comps accurately, right? So first thing you got to do is you want to define the subject property. So what kind of property do I have? This is kind of basic 101, right? What's my bed, bath count? What's the square footage? What's the lot size? What's my layout? What's my location? What are my conditions and what are my upgrades, right? So we always want to just have a baseline. That's pretty basic. Now here's the tricky part, right? When you're looking at comps, because before what we would do is we'd go back like the last 90 days and we pull like all the active pending solds. But now that we know that 90 days may not be, the most accurate, because if the market shifted from then, it's no longer relevant, right? And so what I'm looking at is, rather than going 90 days, I'm first starting off at seeing 30 days, right? I want to see what sort of data I have that's within the last 30 days. And then I'm only going to go further to 90 days if I don't have enough data, right? So I'd rather than just default going to 90, go last 30 and see what you come up with. Even if you have to expand your radius a little bit, right? Just see what's going on in the last 30 days, right? Start there. You want to look at what's active, right? Which is, what are the buyers choosing instead, right? So if something is active right now and other ones have sold or went pending, that means someone didn't choose that property and they chose a different one. Why did they choose that other one, right? That's what I want to know, right? I got this property, it's active, it's been sitting on the market for 30 days. Well, this other one sold. Okay, well, what was the difference between those two, right? So this is where you got to do a little bit more homework, guys. It's no more just like a quick glance. Hey, this is where I'm at. Here's the range. Just throw it on. Let the market do its thing. That's not working right now, right? I want to look at pendings. And I want to look at pendings within the last 30 days. What did buyers recently commit to, right? Because the pendings and the actives are going to tell you the most information right now as the market's changing. The pendings are going to tell you, well, those actually made it into contract, right? So I need to understand why that one went pending, right? Then I'm gonna go into it in a second of what you're gonna do to find that information. The solds 30 to 90 days, that's what the appraiser is going to use. So now I need to know, okay, well, this appraised at value, right? Because that's important too. Like, it's not just getting in contract or getting it sold. It's also, is it going to appraise, right? So you're kind of looking at it from two lenses. Will I check off the appraisal, right? But then also, where do I price it? And you want to make sure like it's going to hit those two, right? Because if, let's say, like, think about this, like if in the last 90 days, the property values went down, right? You have higher comps, now yours is lower, well, then it's going to appraise, right? Because the appraiser is using those last 90 days. So you're fine there. But if it were the opposite, it may not appraise, right? Like we've seen that in other markets where the prices were continuing to go up, right? And then we have appraisal issues, right? So, but you just need to be careful right now and just make sure that it's going to appraise as well. Because I don't know if buyers today are necessarily super gung-ho to put money out of pocket to cover an appraisal gap, just because of where the rates are and what the cost of money is, right? Okay, you want to overlay the market trends. So days on market, right? What is that neighborhood doing? What's the average days on market, right? I want to know what the average days on market is. And then I'm comparing that to the other ones that are still on the market, or even pending, right? So let's say like the ones that have sold, the average days on market was 20 days, but then I got a property that's been 30 days on the market. Okay, well, why is that one on the market for 30 days when all these other ones, you know, that are pending went pending in 20 days? That's telling me something right there, right? I want to look for the inventory levels. Is there a lot of inventory right now in that neighborhood or not? Any price reductions. So when you pull up comps and you go on the MLS, scroll to the bottom, because if you just do a quick CMA, you're not going to see price reductions, right? You're just seeing all like the current list price just on one spreadsheet. But you got to click on each comp now and go to the bottom and click on the history and then see if they've reduced their price, because you're not always going to know that stuff, right? And now you got to do a little bit more homework, a little bit more digging, right? So then when you're going to your seller and saying, hey, these are the comps, these are the 3 that are active right now, but hey, this one reduced their price 2 different times. They started off at this price. After 30 days, they went here. Then 30 days later, they went here, right? That's intimate knowledge that the seller or the consumer won't see online. So you got to be able to explain that to them, right? Because if they're thinking, well, that one's priced here, so I'm going to price mine here. Yeah, but they had 2 price reductions already, right? That's why I'm the advisor, right? Question?
Yeah, quick question. So I know you mentioned like in this kind of market, the better strategy is to kind of look at data that's recent but kind of further out. But my follow-up question to that is like, what's like a limit to how farther out we can look? Because the deal I got into contract recently, the guy used to like my actual appraiser used to comp from like 2 miles away.
Yeah. Okay. So Dev said, how far out do we want to go? When we're comping stuff out, right? And what appraisers are going to do, they're going to look at what's the most recent and available information, and also comparable. So it depends on the type of property. So like if you're pricing a townhouse and there's not a lot of townhouses in that neighborhood, then they may have to go to like an adjacent neighborhood because there's some other townhouse inventory there, right? So sometimes he's going out, like you said, he went out 2 miles. That's probably because there was nothing else available, right? So it's not a one size fits all. Like you always want to start close and recent and then expand outward in time and expand outward in radius.
Like if there is nothing.
If there's
else,
nothing,
okay,
right?
so-
And we're seeing a lot of that because the condos and townhouses are not moving. So now these appraisers have to go further out.
Yeah.
Right? I'm seeing a lot of that on the lending side.
Yeah. So let's say you get in contract on a condo in Blossom Valley, but there's nothing else has gone pending in the last 90 days. The appraiser has no other comps to go off of. So he's going to expand and say, okay, well, in the next neighborhood over, a condo went pending.
Yeah.
And then he might make an adjustment, right? He might say, okay, that one went pending, but this neighborhood typically sells for this much more. So then he's adjusting, right? We're getting off into the weeds on how appraisers think, but it's a matter of like finding stuff and then adjusting for the current situation, right?
Thank you so much.
There is a skill guide, right? There's going to be like a little bit of guesswork that has to happen, in my opinion. Now, calculated guess, right? In my opinion, but Now, there's gonna be, everyone has a different formula of how things work. So you've got to understand that this is a skill that you have to build up. Even I have to build it up. That's what I hear.
Yeah.
Right?
Definitely you got to build a skill, guys. It's not something like the more you do this stuff, the more you're going to learn, right? Magali, you got a question?
Yeah. Hey, Enrique, do we have like a training on best practices for comps or like tips and tricks to do the best, I guess, comps, and also keep it in mind for it to appraise?
Yeah, that's what we're gonna cover in this training. So we'll get to that at the end
Okay.
if time permits. But right now, like what I'm talking about right now, like this is what
Okay.
you should be when you're comping out a property. These are the steps to pull up your comps, right? So this is where you're gonna want to start. You're gonna want to go on the MLS and you're gonna want to run through these steps. And I'll give you a checklist at the end of this as well. You want to look for pricing patterns in the last 30 to 60 days, not just 90 days, right? We covered that already, right? I want you guys looking at stuff sooner and focusing more on the actives and pendings. Okay, so here's what's super, super important. And this is something that we probably weren't doing before that is crucial right now, is you need to call other agents and give feedback. Anybody else who has a property on the market, active, pending, or sold that is recent, you need to talk to them because they're going to be able to give you the insight and information, right? Before, like I said, we would just kind of do a quick and easy because that it would sell, right? Like the market would sell the
But
property.
Enrique, I mean, you've done a lot of listings. This was a practice. You would call a lot of agents in that area. I mean, what did you,
I mean, sometimes the information would be obvious, right? Like when you would look at the comps and the market was just moving and things were selling in 10 days or less, it was like obvious, right? Like as long as you price somewhere right here, like it's going to sell.
Yeah.
It was obvious. So I wasn't necessarily having to call.
Yeah.
I was just looking at, okay, it sold in 7 days. This one sold in 7 days. This one sold in 7 days. They all priced this much. They all went this much. I didn't really have to spend too much time calling the agents, right? But we're not in that right now, right? When you got properties that are sitting on the market, now I got to call agents and see what the hell's happening with that listing, right? So why does it matter is because the sold comps are outdated, right? A home that sold 30 days ago may have gotten pending 60 days ago, right? And the market has changed since then. Pendings and actives are going to give us that live pulse of what buyers are saying right now. And then the agents that you talk to, they're going to have the insights that you don't know yet, right? So Rob has a listing coming up in Communication Hill. Him and I were on a call the other day, and he's asking me to help him price it out. He told me his price that he thought, right, and I was like 50 grand less, right? And the reason why is because Rob and I were on the call, and I actually called a couple listing agents on the phone with him and started getting some activity, right? Like there was a really, really nice comp in that Communication Hill that was priced a little higher that was still sitting for 30 days. And like the home was like beautiful, right? Beautiful home, newer, better floor plan, super like staged. The seller's like an interior designer. Like it looked like a model home, right? And it had views and everything. And that one was still sitting for 30 days, right? So I'm like, I called the guy. I happen to know the agent. And I'm like, dude, why hasn't yours sold, right? Like, I don't know if I want to take this listing if yours hasn't sold, right? He started telling me like they've had interest, no offers. He started telling me the whole story, right? And then so based off that information, now when I'm helping Rob price his out, I'm like, dude, we need to come lower than that. Because if that one is way nicer than yours and it's not selling, then that means your price needs to be lower. Because if I was a buyer and I had a budget between 800,000 and 900,000, I'm going for that house over yours all day, right? Unless yours was enticing enough for me to like say, okay, well, that's a better deal, right? So that's why I think Rob was saying something around like 840-ish. And I'm like, dude, you got to price at 799. Don't take that listing unless they're willing to go 799. What'd you guys end up signing that listing at?
I'm planning on going on the market at 805.
Okay. So right around there, 800, right?
Yeah, I said it's 70 and you said it was 850. So I sold between 850 and 870, but I told them we're going to go have a brief conversation.
Okay.
But 805 is what I'm planning to see.
Okay. So yeah, you're somewhere in like around the 8s. Like I think you're good. So here's what you want to ask. How's the showing traffic been, right? How many people have viewed the property? Are you getting a lot of showings? If they're like, no, it's crickets. Okay. Well, then that's telling you something, right? No one's even showing the house. Hey, any offers yet? 0 offers. Or yeah, I got 3 offers, but this is where the offers were at. Okay, well, that's telling me what a buyer is willing to pay for that type of property, right? So if they had no offers, that's telling you something. If they've had offers, that's also telling you where the price range may truly be, right? Because remember, sometimes the agent might have took that listing because the seller wanted this price, and then they're getting offers right here, and the seller still hasn't come to reality that this is where what the house is worth today, right? But I'm using his property, right? Like his mess up for my information so I could be more successful on mine, right? And so I want to know, did you get any offers? What kind of offers did you receive? What was the feedback you're getting from your buyers? Why do you think your home is still sitting on the market? Why do you think it hasn't sold yet? I want to know, because the agent, like if they're hosting open houses and theirs has been on the market for 30 days, they're going to know why it hasn't sold, right? Any concessions. So if the property did go pending, I'm not just calling actives, I'm calling pendings. Hey, you went pending. Can you tell me what price? Also, can you tell me the terms of your offer? You know, like were you giving credits or anything like that? Maybe the price like looks good, but then they're giving like this much in credits, right? Which the price is really down here. Okay, now that's telling me something as well. And then also how quickly did it go pending, right? Or, hey, I saw you reduce the price twice and then it went pending. You know, what happened during that time? Did you get nothing when it was a higher price and then you reduced it? All of a sudden, you know, the phone's ringing. I want to know that information, right? When do you want to do this, guys? When you're pricing a new listing, right? Absolutely. Before you price the listing, before you go through pricing strategy, you want to do this. When you have a listing that's sitting on the market, you need to do this as well, right? Because then you're going to reevaluate and see if you need to make any adjustments, and you need to go back to your seller with all this information, right? You can't just go back to a seller and say, hey, Mr. Seller, like house is not selling, let's drop the price. That's not going to sit well with most sellers. But what can work is, hey, I did all this homework, right? I spent an hour on the phone making calls, checking things out. These are all my notes. I want to review all my notes with you. And then after I'm reviewing my notes, hey, seller, what do you think we should do next? You see how that's different than like, hey, let's drop the price versus like, let me give you all this feedback. And now you ask them, what do you think we should do next? Here's what I recommend, right? And you want to do that also, obviously, when preparing for a price reduction conversation. You cannot just come to that conversation empty-handed. You have to have your homework, your ducks in a row. It has to be well thought out. Use Chat GPT if you got to. Dump your notes in there, right? Make it easy for the seller to digest, right? This way, like the numbers and the feedback doesn't lie. Then you take the emotion out of it, and now the seller is like, okay, I got to make a decision now. Do I want to get this home sold or not? And remember, guys, sometimes we're scared to go back to sellers and ask for a price reduction. It can be scary. It can be daunting. But remember, if someone really wants to sell, they are going to do what they got to do to get what they want. Remember, every human will do what they got to do to get what they want, right? If you really want to succeed in real estate, you'll make your calls. If you don't really care, you know, right? That's just the way it goes, right? If you really want to get fit, you'll go to the gym and watch your diet, right? Like if you really want to sell your house, you'll do what's necessary, whether you got to drop the price, spend a little money. If it's that important to you, you're going to do what you have to do, right? So we can't be afraid to go relay that information, right? We just got to be able to explain it, advise them, give them their options, and then help them, you know, come to the best decision for them.
Yeah, no, I think that's a big takeaway for me is you're saying now that when you're going to, you know, have to adjust that price. I like that idea because I was thinking you only do that when you first list the property or when you're going to do your presentation. I like that add-on where it's like, hey, listen, now I got to go talk to Chris. I got to explain to him that we're going to have to make an adjustment on price. But let me go ahead and call the pendings, the active. Let me get some ammo so I can bring it to him and we can make that decision together.
Exactly.
That's a big takeaway.
Exactly. And the other thing you do is you frame this already in your presentation up front, right? Because what you don't want, where people go wrong is when they're surprised. When people are surprised or blindsided, that's when people put up a wall. That's when people don't want to do something. But when they've been over communicated, and we talked about this in our Tuesday meeting, where we're over communicating this, it's part of your presentation. Hey, when we work together, this is the way pricing strategy works. It's not a set in stone. It's a moving target. This is what we're going to do throughout the time that your home is listed on the market. I'm going to check in with you every week, and I'm going to give you updates on what's going on. You know, this way, if we do if we need to make any tweaks, we will be prepared to make those tweaks and we won't be blindsided, right? So I'm already setting the expectations up front that we may have to adjust your price, right? Versus like all gung ho, let's list it. I never told them anything about potential price adjustments. And now it's 30 days later and I'm like, hey, we got to lower the price. And they're like, well, I thought you were going to save the day. You told me you had all these 5-star reviews, right? Like you told me how great of a listing agent you were. I thought like, that's why I chose you, right? And so you got to tell them what makes me a great listing agent is that we keep the pulse on the market, right? Is that we make these tweaks as we go, right? You know, we run plays depending on what the situation is that we're in. It's not a one size fits all and the market is moving. So we got to move with the market, right? And so I just want to set that expectation up front, Mr. Seller, that we're going to come on to the market. But remember, it's all about strategy. And in a couple of weeks, if this strategy is not working, we're going to talk about adjusting our strategy. Is that fair, Mr. Seller? Right?
Have that uncomfortable conversation. And I think when you get really good at it, it's not even an uncomfortable conversation. It's just part of your presentation.
Yeah.
Right. But if you're uncomfortable with it, start having those more often.
Yeah. And just
that out immediately.
Yeah, and just imagine, right? I met with my seller, did the listing presentation, and I threw all that at my seller up front. How do you think they're looking at me now? Like a professional, like a professional, right? They're like, okay, shit, this guy knows his shit, right? Like this guy, okay, now I'm seeing why I'm hiring this guy.
And I think a lot of times the sellers appreciate you not sugarcoating.
Yeah.
Like, if they're really serious and you got a buyer that wants to get to the next level, you don't need to sugarcoat it for them. You just got to tell them what it is and present the information. I think is important.
Yeah, because what sellers want is sellers want leaders, right? Sellers want people who are going to lead them, advise them, and get them to the finish line. And so you're making a huge mistake if you're painting a picture that's going to be really easy, right? There's a lot of moving parts, just with the logistics of even getting a house on the market, plus the market conditions. There's a lot of moving parts, a lot of people that have to make this thing happen. So you're doing yourself a disservice if you're painting a picture like it's going to be all smooth and smooth sailing, right? You need to let them know like, hey, there's going to be some tweaks that we got to make, right? And this is why we're in it together. They're going to respect you for that. Okay. Hold on. Okay. Pricing strategy framework, right? So these are the questions you got to consider. Like I said, what can a buyer get nearby for X, right? You always want to ask, what can a buyer get nearby? And you always want to even show the seller, hey, Mr. Seller, based off the data, we're in this price range, but let's also see what else is out there and what can a buyer purchase in this price range. And you start showing them the active comps in that neighborhood, in the adjacent neighborhoods. Hey, Mr. Seller, look at this property right here. How do you think this property compares to yours, right? Even if that means you got to print out 10 different listings, active listings, and show them the photos and go through this with them, right? It's a little more work up front, but you're going to bring the seller down to reality, right? When you're trying to get them the price less, because if they're like, oh shit, that house is nice. That one's only going for 1.2. They're like, yeah, it's down the street. Now they're like, they were thinking 1.4 for theirs. And now they're like, yeah, right. Like now in their mind, they're like, yeah, I don't know if mine's a 1.4, if that one's going for 1.2. When you show them enough proof, enough data, and you're showing them the sheets and you slide the sheet to them, right? Like I got the photos right here of that new listing that's down the street, right? And I show it to them and then they're like, this is nice. Mine ain't that nice. This is cheaper. It's bigger.
I think that's
right.
Huge. I think that's huge, Enrique, because a lot of times you guys are competing against other agents, right? And other agents may tell them what they want to hear, right? But when you come in there, yeah, you can say it, but if you present it the way Enrique is saying, here's the actual photos, here's the actual listing. This is how long it's been sitting. Now that's different than this telling them. You're actually showing them the data, right? And I think especially when you're competing with other agents, some agents will just I know you guys have lost listings because other agents will say, yeah, I'll sell your house at 1.5 and you know it's worth 1.3, right? Other agents will sign that. But if you come with it with that data and showing the seller that, a light bulb will go off and they'll make that adjustment.
Yeah, absolutely. Because you could still win a listing just because, like, even if another agent said they'll sell it for more and you're saying less, you could still win that listing. But the only way you're going to win that is if you have compelling data that shows why it's that way. If it's just, hey, this is what I think your house is worth, then the winner is the guy who thinks it's worth more. All right. That's a lose-lose game right there, right? You said 1.5, this guy said 1.525, right? I'm going with him. But if you're like, hey, like I prepared all this information and I'm going to go through it with you and let's actually break this down. I want to educate you on how this process works and what's going on in the market, right? Like at the end of this, whether you decide to choose me or not, you're going to learn a lot about what it takes to sell your home and what you're up against, right? And then at the end, when you're like, hey, I recommend we price at 1.4, even though that guy says 1.5, and now they're like, yeah, you're right. That guy was just blowing smoke, right? But if you don't do all that, then it's just like he already seems better, right? That's why you got to take these extra steps. If a buyer can get newer, larger, more upgraded homes nearby for the same price, your listing loses, bottom line. And you got to tell people that, right? Always think from a buyer's perspective, not the seller's. And then you're going to adjust based on the market type. So this is important right here. Magali, you were asking like choosing price, right? So now you got to figure out what's the market type. And remember, this is going to be neighborhood specific, you know, as we're seeing. So if it's a seller's market, let's say like, hey, in this pocket of Sunnyvale, like nothing lasts, right? It's still a seller's market. Not much pops up. When it does pop up, average days on market has been 10 days or less. Well, I know that that neighborhood's a seller's market. So if that's the case, I can price it closer to or just a little bit under market value, and I'll still get the demand, right? Now, if it's more of a balanced market, right, then I need to look at the pendings, right? If that market is balanced, where yeah, there's some that are selling, there's some that are sitting, it's kind of a mixed bag, and they're in the same neighborhood, and there's a lot to choose from. There's a little more inventory. Then I might want to just look at the pendings and like talk to the agents and see what those are going for. And I want to price somewhere right there. Now, if it's a buyer's market where like there's a lot of homes to choose from, nothing's really moving, it's taking a long time. Well, then how do you make yours stand out? How do you make yours stand out when there's a bunch of listings, all of them are sitting?
At the bottom of the market.
You got to price lower, right? You got to price lower, right? Because if there's a lot to choose from, then who wins? The cheaper one. If there's 10 homes that I could choose from right now in this little pocket, the one that wins is the nicest and the cheapest, right? So if you're like, well, I'm just going to price the same as all the other ones, well, then what's making you stand out, right? So that's why the market type for that neighborhood, you're going to change your strategy a bit, right? Does that make sense, guys? You guys following me?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think it's important when I like what you're emphasizing is that neighborhood, that area, right? Not the San Jose, not the Santa Clara, but you really get focused on that particular neighborhood. I think it's extremely important.
Yeah.
Right. Especially when you're doing condos and townhouses or even, Communication Hill, because that's what they're comparing it to, that actual complex or that center.
Yeah, exactly. Like someone looking in Communication Hill, that's like a whole neighborhood, right? Like you want to be up there on the hill, you want the views, you want to be able to run the stairs, whatever it wants to be. Like people want to be in Communication Hill. Well, you got to look at everything in Communication Hill, right? So it's that particular neighborhood. What's that neighborhood doing, right? And then you can, like Communication Hill, for example, there's a lot of different property types up there, right? You got 2 bedrooms, you got 1 bedrooms, you got like, tri-levels, you got condo style, you got like some single families up there, I think. So what I'd probably do is I'd probably just look at Communication Hill in general first, and I'd analyze what's happening in all of Communication Hill with all properties, right? And then I start now selecting, okay, what's happening just with the townhouses? What's happening just with the condos? And I'd see, okay, is it the same all across the board, right? Or is like, no, like townhouses, those are moving, but the condos are sitting. Okay, well then I might need to price it a little bit different if I'm a condo, right? And so that's where you kind of like, you got to do some homework, right? To see what the trend is up there in that area, right? Or in that particular pocket, especially when there's like a mixed bag, right? Okay. Seller talk track. This is important, right? You're going to have to go to your sellers or you're going to have to talk, right? This is just a basic script right here that you guys can use. It doesn't have to be exactly like this, but it should be something like this, right? Similar. What you got to let people know is that our job is to price your home in the market, not just on the market, right? Buyers today are comparing your home to what else is available right now, right? That's why we also look at what's actively for sale and what's gone pending, because that tells us what buyers are actually choosing today, right? It's not just what's sold a few months ago. It's actually what's going on today, right? A home that sold a month ago may have gone into contract when the market was stronger. So we call those agents to find out how fast it moved, if it needed a price cut, or if the seller had to give away any concessions to make the deal work, right? Based on everything we've gathered, Mr. Seller, the comps, the competition, the buyer trends, I recommend a price range that gives you the best shot at selling quickly for the highest possible net, right? This would be my price range based off all that information. It's not just what you see here on paper. It's also what I've gathered from my conversations with the agents, from actually seeing what's on the market, from comparing it to other homes that are available, right? It's not just, hey, these are the 3 that sold. This is where we're pricing, right? And so the key point here in the conversation is, right, is you're explaining to them the way that that we're coming up with the information. That's the key thing here, right? It isn't just this sentence at the bottom. Hey, based on the comps, this is where you should price at.
And I think to kind of really bring that home, the sense of that's what majority of agents are doing. They're just bringing the comps.
Yeah.
Right. That's what. So that's why it's important that you separate yourself from the rest of the agents by making those calls and reaching out to the pending that.
Exactly. Right. And it's going to show your professionalism, guys. When you have done all that homework and you have like your own little notes right there on the comps, that's what I would always do, right? I would take my comps and I'd have it like on a quick CMA, but then I would call all the agents and I would write notes for every single listing, right? So let's say there were 10 comps, active, pending, sold. I'd write number 1, number 2, number 3, 1 through 10, and I'd put notes next to it. Comp number 1, spoke to the agent, 10 offers, sold in this price, had foundation, whatever, right? Comp number 2, and I would have all these notes. So then when I'm going over the comps, I'm showing them, hey, look, I did all my homework. I spoke to all these agents. And like what you see here doesn't tell the whole story. This is actually what went on behind the scenes, right? And so that's something that I've always done that because I want to be prepared, guys. Like I don't want to go in there looking like I don't know my stuff.
And the big takeaway for me is like we always want to provide our buyers and sellers information they can't find on their own.
Yeah.
They can find comps on their own, right? But they're not calling the agents. They're not doing the work that Enrique has recommended that we do, right? And I want us to always come from that lens of how can we give these clients something they cannot find on their own? That's value then. That's value as an agent.
Or do you have a list of things that just quick little like notes that you ask when you speak to an agent? Do you have just for like to have that as a SOP? Everything you get.
There's a checklist I'm going to show you guys at the end. But it's it's basically this stuff right here, right? How's the showing traffic been? Any offers or what kind of offers did you receive? Feedback, right? Like pretend like you're just trying to do your investigation on like what's going on with that property, right? It's stuff that would already come to your mind, right? It's not that complicated. But yeah, there's a checklist at the end that I can give you.
Getting a lot of calls, Enrique,
Yeah.
from other agents asking those same questions.
Yeah.
And they're just trying to get a sense of what's happening, like with all the listings that I have on the market. So,
They're coming to the norm.
They're doing it, and they're telling me, hey, listen, you know what? I have a list that's popping up in the market. I see that you've been on the market now for X amount of days. Just talk to me about it. Let me know what's going on. And I know what they're doing. They're running back. At first, I thought he was trying to snake me, but then I'm like, no, they're actually what they're doing is they're grabbing that information to go ahead and use it for their
Yeah.
right?
As a good agent should, right? They should use that information.
Well, Blanca, that's what she advised me with the Los Altos clients. So every house we would see, we would call the listing agent and ask, how's the activity been? Why are the sellers selling? Are there any major issues to the property, etc.
Yeah, absolutely. You definitely got to do your homework, right? If you want to like not help them, just don't tell them what's going on with your listing, right? Because what's going to happen, right, is to think about it this way. Don't do that, right? But I mean, we all got to help each other. We all got to help each other. I'm just being funny. No, but what's going to happen is they're going to use your, they're going to use like your listing sitting on the market. They're like, all right, we're pricing less than that. And now your listing got worse, right? So Okay, price adjustment strategy. So this is the thing that's important, right? Because remember, it's a moving target. You're going to come on at a price. You did all this homework, you throw it on the market, and you're hoping for the best. That's not where the work stops, or where the work stops, right? Now you got to monitor that thing. And this is where you got to do the check-ins with your client every single week to let them know what's going on, so that when you do have to adjust the price, they're not blindsided, right? That's how you save your listings from canceling and expiring and them trying to go hire somebody else, right? So the signals that the price is too high. This is important. No showings in the first 7 to 10 days. If it's been 7 to 10 days on the market and you had 0 showings, right? That's telling you the price is probably a little too high, right? Lots of online views, no showings, right? Because your property could look nice. Like maybe you guys staged it, it's marketed, the photos are well. Like, I mean, we do good marketing, right? Like our properties always look, pretty freaking good. But if it looks great and you're getting no showings, there's only 2 things that are going to dictate the property selling. It's either the marketing, how it shows, or the price, right? So you're like, hey, like our property looks great, right? There's no major red flags on why someone wouldn't buy this, but maybe it's the price and that's why no one's looking at it, right? You're getting a lot of views. So you can go on Redfin, you can go on Zillow, and you're like, hey, 50 people saved it. There was 4,000 views, but no one has come to look at it. Okay, they're telling you something, and this is what you got to tell the sellers, right? Hey, Mr. Seller, we're getting a lot of views. We actually got 5,000 views in the first week. We'd had 25 saves, between Zillow and Redfin, but we got 0 people that wanted to come look at it, right? Or you're getting showings, but no offers. People came and looked at it, right? You got a handful of showings, 0 offers come in. That's telling you something, right? Okay, when to adjust. So in week number 2, you want to review showings and agent feedback, right? You should probably do this every week, but definitely within the first 2 weeks, right? Because sometimes it takes just a little bit of exposure, right? Like, especially like if the market's not selling in 7 days, like 2 weeks is a good amount of time to see, okay, this is a good sample size, right? So definitely within those 2 weeks, you're going to review all the showings and agent feedback. By day 21, if there's no real traction, that's when it's time to think about the price adjustment. By day 21. I wouldn't let it go past day 30. So between 21 to 30 days, if nothing has happened, you got to get in front of that, right? And start changing the price. Do not change the price in 1 week. Do not change it in 2 weeks, right? It should be 3 to 4 weeks is when you change the price, right? Question.
Yeah. So, I mean, this is like a general range for our Santa Clara County market, right? But this isn't like a general rule of thumb. Let's say if you're looking at Hollister or like other kind of markets that are a little bit slower. I mean, this kind of number that you're providing is just kind of for our local San Jose, like local Bay Area market. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of hard to say, right? Because I mean, like we have a Hollister listing that went in pending within 2 weeks and above list price. But Blanca priced it well. The property looked really nice and she priced it really well. And there's a lot of other properties that have been sitting, right? So guys, price, right? Like people are buying, like if there's sold, here's the thing. If homes have sold, like you look back and there's comps that have sold, that means people are buying. Now, if there's 0, like nothing sold in 90 days in Hollister, well, that's a different problem, right? That means people just aren't buying in Hollister. But if things are selling, right, then I would still take this approach, right? Because as it says right here, each week the home sits, it gets less attention and the perceived value starts to change, right? If someone saw that property already and it's the same price, the same photos, the same everything, and it's 30 days later, like people are already thinking like, yeah, something's wrong with that property or it's priced too high or whatever. There's buyers looking on Zillow all the time, right? And so the seller talk track, right, is let's say, hey, it's been like, you've already talked to them. Hey, I just want to give you feedback. In the beginning, the first couple of weeks, you're not telling them to do anything. You're just saying, hey, I want to let you know what's going on.
Yeah.
Here's the data. Here's the feedback. Week 1. Here's the data. Here's the feedback. Week 2. Week 3. Here's the data. Here's the feedback. Right? Hey, Mr. Seller, now it's time to start thinking if we need to adjust our pricing strategy. Right? The market, it's been 3 weeks now. I've given you updates every week. Right? The market is now giving us clear feedback. Right? Buyers are looking, but they're not acting. that usually means we've missed the mark on price. Remember I told you when we first signed up that we're going to make adjustments when we need to make. This is the time when we got to make adjustments, right? And as you've seen over the last 3 weeks, based off the feedback, here's all my emails I sent you. This is the total of how many people showed it, total of how many offers, total of how many views, right? People are viewing it. People are showing it. People are seeing it online, but no one's acting. That means the price. There's something up with the price, right? So instead of like sitting, hoping, right? The best move is we adjust now so that we re-energize the listing and we show buyers and agents that we're serious about selling, right? We don't want to keep letting it sit and get stale, right? We need to make an adjustment now. And that's the talk track, right? But that talk track only works if what?
Be communicating with them.
Yeah, I wasn't looking for your answer. I want to make sure that that talk track only works, Adrian, if what? That talk track. Jason's taking the class today too. He's like, Jason, I'll take you now, right?
It's good stuff. I mean, to me, not to cut you off, Enrique, when I look at this, there's a lot of stuff in here, right? It's not just looking at comp. Like Enrique says, you pull up the MLS, look at the comp, that's it. There's a lot of stuff to go into this if you're going to be a listing agent, which is awesome, right? Because I think this is an opportunity for you to level up, to separate yourself from other agents, right? By doing these things here. But it takes all these small things. All these small things need to happen so that you can go ahead and move these deals forward. And I think
Absolutely.
that's important to understand. You just can't pick and choose. Well, I'm going to only use this.
Yeah.
You got to use all these things that come into play so that you can have a successful real estate business.
That's a great point, right? Because it's the stacking of all these things
Yes.
that makes it success, right? It's not just like, hey, that was a good idea, Enrique. That one idea that you had of like call the actives, that was a good idea. I'm going to start doing that. It's not going to work, guys. It's the system, right?
Yes.
You can't just pick and choose which parts are easy for you and convenient, right? And you don't get the full results. It's like baking a cake. You can't just take one ingredient and expect the cake to come out. You got to put all the ingredients together and you got a good cake, right? My lady bakes cakes. I've learned that from her, right? So, guys, you have to take it all, right? Okay, questions. I'm going to go through a checklist in a second. So we're coming up on time. We're probably gonna have to do a second version of this, right? Where actually I pull up a property and I analyze it in front of you and I kind of walk you through now applying the system, right? We can do it quickly.
Yeah, let's do it real quick.
I mean, if you guys want to, we got 5 minutes left. If you guys got like
Come on.
yeah. Yeah, your property that you're, yeah.
No, I have one that I recently I'm having a really hard time because it's like limiting comps and
Okay, I could try my best, right? Yeah, definitely. Give me 1 second. Give me the property. If you guys have 10 minutes, we'll run through a property. Really quick, guys, the checklist. This was the last slide, right? So yeah, this is recorded. This is pretty much the checklist, right? Agent pricing checklist. You're evaluating the property and the specs. You're pulling the actives pending solds. You're adjusting the comps for differences. You got to see the local trends. You're calling the listing agent for actives and pendings, right? This is like probably the most crucial step that a lot of you guys may have not been doing, spending that time. And it takes a little time, guys, to be honest. You may not reach people. You may call them. They don't answer. I text them, right? Hey, John, I triple tap, right? Hey, John, I have a listing coming up right next to your listing. I see you guys are pending. Can you give me an idea of whatever? And remember, sometimes you got to play the game. Sometimes these agents, they're busy, right? They don't want to give you the info. I bug the crap out of them, right? I'll keep calling them. I'll call them later in the day. It's like trying to get a hold of a lead. You may have to do that, right? You want to ask yourself, what can a buyer get nearby for this price, right? That's important. You're building your pricing range recommendation, right? Are you going aggressive, neutral, or high, depending on what's happening in that market, right? Is that market a hot market? Is it a more of a balance? Is it moving towards a buyer's market? Different pricing strategy for those ones. The review checkpoints, 7-day, 14-day, and 21-day reviews. That's really important. Some of you guys may not be doing that, right? You're throwing on the market and you're just kind of waiting, right? No, I need the 7-day, the 14-day, and the 21-day check-ins with your seller, reviews, and then by day 21, it's time to make an adjustment if we haven't sold, right? And then you got the script, right? To have the seller conversations around strategy and take away the emotion, right? Show them the data. And then you got to monitor the showings, agent feedback, and online engagement, right? You got to go look up your own property like a buyer on Zillow and see how many saves it got. Look at it on a Redfin, realtor.com, like the major sites, put that together in an email, send that to your client as part of your weekly check-in, right? Or you give them a call. It actually should be done on a call. I know sometimes you want to automate, right? Some of you tech guys like, hey, I'm just going to put this in a text and chat GPT it. No, right? Do not do that, right? That could be a follow-up as a supplement to your call, but it needs to be a call. Hey, Mr. Seller, every Friday or every Monday, I'm going to call you and we're going to review what happened this past week with your listing, right? And we're going to do a 7-day, a 14-day, and a 21-day. And within 21 days, that's when it's time to talk about adjustments if we need to. Hopefully we sold within the first couple weeks, right? So you're already setting the stage of what's going to happen. But guys, there's no setting and forgetting it right now, right? Takes more work than that. Okay, let's go. Give me the property address. Let me show you what I'm going to do. I'm going to do it quick, right? Because we don't have a lot of time. So
Can we do the one I have?
oh, okay. Mark had already requested, but
Okay.
what's yeah, Mark had already asked first. Mark, which one do you got?
I have the one in Oakland. I don't know if you want to do Oakland.
Okay. Mark, hold on. Amish, Mark had already asked first to
Sure.
review his property. So let
Okay.
me go with Mark's, and then if we have time, we'll jump into yours. Mark's, what's the address? Okay. Paso, P-A-S-O. Okay. I'm gonna do this the quick way, guys, just because we're coming up on time. I love Redfin's search tool. I use Redfin a lot to like just do quick searches on there, right? When I'm like on the fly. If I want to spend more time on this, right? If I have more time, I'm gonna go on obviously the MLS and pull up because there's more information there. But just for like a quick overview, I start off on Redfin's, right? So I'm gonna look at Redfin. This is the property that you're looking at, right? So right off the bat, I'm establishing what type of property do we have, right? It's a townhouse, right? I'm assuming these photos are recent because it would look like it was a rental, right? So I'm establishing condition, really nice property, right? Nice property, looks like it was staged, looks like it's in good condition, it's fairly new, right? I'm gonna skim through the photos real quick. You know, kitchen looks like it's refreshed, right? I mean, overall, like this property is a solid, it's A minus, right? I mean, the kitchen's not brand new, but it's considered remodeled. It has granite, it has painted cabinets and stainless steel appliances. So I give this property like A minus, B plus. I mean, yeah, there's nothing that I see as like, yes. What's your question?
Yeah, so for something like this, you mentioned it's like a B plus, A minus, right? Like what would make it like an A plus, like for something like this?
What would make a property an A plus? What was that? A brand new home. Brand new home, fully modernized, the newest contemporary finishes and all that. That's an A plus, right? Remodeled property, that's an A, right? Remodeled, but a little bit older. Now I'm going like A minus, B plus, right? Okay property, some remodeled a little bit, some not. Like the kitchen's good, bathrooms suck, right? Maybe I'm a B minus, right? C is like my fixers, right? Like needs work, it's clean, but it's, it needs dated, right? So that's kind of right. A plus is like dream home.
Very helpful.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm in my mind. So then when I'm looking at comps, right? When I pull up my comps, I'm writing A, B, or C, plus or minuses on there, right? When I'm writing my notes for my comps, right? Because when I go to the seller, I want to say, yeah, this property right here that just sold, I gave it a B plus because of this, right? And so it's not as nice as yours, but it was actually pretty clean. They did some sprucing up. I would consider your guys as like an A, right? But this one's like a B plus. So it's close, right? And I'm making my like mental adjustments. Okay, so beds, bath, square footage. Do you know what those are? So I don't. Okay. 4 bed, 4 bath, 1842 square feet. Okay, so what I'm gonna look at quickly is in this zip code, what can I buy? What can I buy? Let me go. Because I'm trying to do it quick right now with you guys. Right. Redfin's gonna give me a quick snapshot, and then if I gotta go deeper, I'm gonna go into MLS, right? What I want to show you guys is it's not where you get the data, it's like knowing how to use the data, right? Redfin's pulling from the MLS, so it has a lot of stuff. It's not gonna, you can see pricing history. It's user friendly. That's the reason why I like Redfin. So I'm gonna pull up, I'm gonna keep this tab open so that I can go back to my property, and then I'm gonna pull up a new one. And if I want to buy a house right now in 94539, and this is a townhouse, right? I'm not even gonna plug in 4-bed. I'm just gonna go townhouse first, and I'm gonna see what's available, right? So I got 9 homes. Let me double check my filters here. So for sale, any price range, townhomes, coming soon, active, right? I'm just gonna start there, and then I'll look at under contract and pending. So I got 9 homes. So what Redfin will do is these top ones right here are going to be like the ones that are in that area. And then they're also going to like show you other ones, right? But and now I'm going to put them in order of price. How many square feet is my home? 1842. So let's look at this, right? Like this one's been on the market 35 days. It's 3-bed, 3-bath, 35 days, 1,400 square feet. So it's smaller, right? Just by the first pick. Is it comparable? Is condition comparable, guys?
Actually, it's a little out, it looks dirty, a little outdated.
So don't mistake marketing photos for, right? Like look closely at the photos. Does it have like paint, hardwood floors, recessed lights, upgraded, stuff like that? This is comparable, guys, right? Don't mistake your preference with comparable in condition, right? If you're like, oh, I don't like those cabinets. Yeah, but they're brand new and there's granite, right? So someone may like those. Just because you don't like the color, that's not what makes A, B, or C, right? And so remodeled is still considered remodeled. Like when an appraiser does it, they're going to say, is it remodeled? Is it dated? Or whatever that might be, right? So 1.495, 35 days on the market. That thing's sitting and it's smaller. So that tells me it's overpriced, right? Okay. This one right here, 1430, 2298 square feet, just went on the market, right? But this just went on the market, so we still don't know how the market responded to this. But this also, if I'm pricing, mine's a little bit smaller, right? Similar condition. So where should mine naturally be? Lower than that one, right? Okay. This one right here, 1801 square feet, 3-bed, 2.5 bath, similar size to ours, right? Comparable? Ours is a 4. But this one's been on the market 34 days. Right? And so on the surface, it tells me that this one's priced a little high. This one right here, 1580 square feet, 41 days on the market, 1215. Nice property. Now, here's the other thing with condos, right? With condos and townhouses, guys, the other thing that we didn't talk about is the HOA fee, right? The HOA fee is important when assessing condos and townhouses because that also takes away from buying power. If this one right here, 1.43, a little bit bigger, but it has a really high HOA and mine has a low HOA, people are going to compare that. They're going to use that when they're judging, right? So that's the only caveat when you have a condo or a townhouse is amenities and HOA dues. And what we've seen now, like in a lot of these newer places, the HOA fees are really high and they're only going to go higher, right? And some of them you're paying, but you got a bunch of stuff. And then some of them you're paying, you don't really have much, right? So that's the part where you got to understand. So our property in particular, does it have a bunch of amenities and how much is the HOA due? Do you know? Okay, so this is going to be crucial information for you to find out, right? Mark doesn't know yet, right? And Mark's potentially meeting this, trying to work on this listing. So I need to know how much the HOA is, and I need to know what's included with that HOA, right? Then you start going here, right? 300. Okay, so let's look at this one then. So this one right here for 143. $386 a month. Okay, very close. So that's comparable in the HOA dues, but we don't know what it offers for amenities. This one has paid off solar. If the solar's paid off, that is going to add some value, right? 15, 20, maybe 30 grand of value. But what I can see right now, so now I'm going to do a little bit more filtering, is as I start getting cheaper in price, these properties are a lot smaller. And they're just different style. They're a little bit older, right? Not necessarily comparable. These are older units. So what I know, just based off looking at this, right? And like, remember, I'm doing this quickly, right? We probably want to dive a little bit more deep. And this is where we start calling the agents and finding that stuff out, right? We're not getting to that part, but just based off of this, I know that my competition in that price range are probably like these top three. Now, if I filter by square footage, if mine's 1,800 square feet, where should I be priced at to look competitive? Just based off the ones that you have, the options that you have for these bigger ones. I can pay 143 and get a 2,300 square feet. I can pay 134 or 135 and get a 1,800.
1.299. If it's 4 beds.
But yeah, I have one more bedroom, right? So I'm going to add a little bit more to mine, right? So if I was to price between somewhere like maybe a little bit higher than this one, or even just a little bit lower, I would look like the better value, right? Because this one's 135 and it's been sitting on the market 34 days. So that tells me that it's not moving at this price, right? And so it might be a little bit overpriced. So if I price that 1,299, 1,3, 1,319, somewhere right there, I'm a 4-bedroom. I look nice. I'm a better value than that one. I think now I'm in that sweet spot where if someone is looking in that area, they're going to pay attention to mine. These other ones down here, they're like, you start getting smaller and they're like older, right? So those probably I wouldn't take into account. They're just a different type of property. Yeah.
So I mean, just thinking out loud here, the one he showed me, the reason I found it notable is because it's in Mission San Jose School District, right? So I think the other ones we're looking at are in Irvington School District. So would that play into any kind of account? Because I mean, if you look at the inventory for Mission San Jose, it's non-existent. Yeah.
So Deb brought up a good question is school district, right? So that's something right now I'm trying to knock this out in 10 minutes, right? Like I would spend more time, right? Remember on that checklist, we got to assess school district. We got to look at the pendings. If I just look right now, under contract, look at my ones that went under contract.
We cannot see the screen you are talking about. We just have one screen, which is,
Can you see this?
yeah, now we can see it. Thank you.
Okay. So I filtered by the ones that are under contract or pending. This one, this is an older property. That's not a comp. This one right here. Yeah.
That's the only one in the proper school district.
Yeah. I mean, this one's at 1448. So let's click on this one. So this one in the same school district? Okay. So this is in the same school district. It's comparable in size. I wouldn't say it's comparable in condition. It's priced at 1448, but it was on the market 32 days. But then I'm going to go down, and look at the price history. Listed at 1498, dropped it 50 grand. When they dropped it 50 grand, then it went contingent and pending. So I'm going to call this agent and I want to know where his offer is at. Right? I want to know where his offer is at, because this is going to tell me also, like, if my data is right. Just by looking at the actives, right? I kind of came up with an assessment, but then now when I know the pendings, I'm going to kind of bridge those two and kind of see, okay, where's the sweet spot, right?
Yeah.
Remember, it's not an exact science, guys. It's a collection of data, right? Looking at the actives, looking at the pendings, looking at your competition, and then you got to come up with an assessment, right?
I think a big thing too, Enrique, is that when you first assess it, when you're presenting for the list to get the listing,
Yeah.
then right before you put it on the market, you have to do this again.
Yeah.
Right. It's important that when I've said that, and letting the seller know that, like, hey, this is where we're at today. But if we list from a month from now, we got to revisit this to see what's active and what's going on.
Correct. Yeah. So yeah, when you go get the listing, sometimes you're not listing that property for several months.
Yeah.
So you need to tell the agent, like, you're doing this a couple of times, right? You do it up front to present the data. Hey, based off where we're at today, right? But if we're not listing for 2 months because we gotta, move out, we gotta prep the property, that data could shift from that time, right? So what we're gonna do is we're gonna revisit this information the same way I did today, and then we're gonna fine tune and see where we should be. And that may be a different price than today. I just want to inform you that, right? Set the right expectations.
It's the same thing we do on the lending side, guys. When we get someone pre-approved, let's say in January, but they're buying now, well, I got to meet with them again and reassess what the rates are and what their situation is.
Yeah. And then based off of this pricing history, did these guys start off the price too high or too low?
No, we don't know.
Yeah, we do. They listed at 1498 and they dropped it 50 grand and then it went pending. So that means they started their price too high, right?
Either the agent didn't have enough information about what the market was doing at that time, or the seller negotiated with the agent saying that they wanted it higher.
Or the market shifted during that time, right? Or the market shifted during that time. It could have been one of those three or a combination of those three, right? Agent just wanted to get the listing, told them what they want to hear. Market shifted, then they had to, but maybe the agent was in touch with them every week, right? Hey, I'm in touch with you every week because they made a price. Look when they made the price change. May 16th to June 6th. How many days is that? 3 weeks. Right? So hats off to the agent. I don't know exactly how they did it, but based off what we talked about, they made the move at the right time. All right? 21 days. Remember, when we're telling these sellers, it's a moving target. We're starting off today right here, and we're now going to test it and see where we're at. But, I'm keeping you informed every week. And then in 21 days, if we don't have anything, that's when we make our price change, right? So, right, you're not going to get it right on the first try, right? You're lucky if you do, right? So now what I'm curious, right, and what I would do is call this guy and let us know, right, so we can know how this plays out. What price is he at right now? So let's say, hold on real quick. Let's say he priced at 1448 and then he got an offer for 14. I don't know, right? Then now we know that one's going for 14 and that one's pending. That's a comp right now. So then now we can go back to ours, right? And then we can decide, okay, where do we enter the market at, right? Do we enter it somewhere? Do we still go, under 135, compared to that other one, or because ours is in a better school district, now we go a little bit under 1.4. But now you're kind of in a range, right? Like between 1.3 and 1.4, somewhere in there. Now it's just a matter of where, right? What's your question, Rob?
So the majority of the sellers that I'm dealing with happen to be like life changes. Something's happening in order for them to sell, right? So when I'm preparing them for these life changes, right, to happen, it's usually they make a decision, or some of them make a decision off of what the seller net sheet is being done.
Yeah.
So if this is a sliding market, right? Like if this is a sliding strategy, right?
Yeah.
There's a very good possibility that the numbers may not make sense for them in 2, 3, 4, 5 weeks, whatever the case may be. If we're going down this route, is that right? How do we minimize those types of cancellations that happen?
How do you guys think, guys? What do you think the answer is? So Rob's saying that when he meets with the seller, he's showing them a price and showing them a net sheet, right? And so they're thinking, I'm going to walk away with this amount. But if the market changes and I have to drop my price, now that amount is lower, right? And then maybe they want to cancel at that point. So how do we combat that up front?
Show a range. You can show a range.
You show a range, right?
And you can show the lower side to the high side and, make sure that if we do hit, and unfortunately, if it falls in this lower range, are you still able to make the move that you're looking for?
Yeah.
Okay.
I would tackle that objection up front, right? Before we decide to move forward. I would say, hey, based off what I see today, right? I'm doing all this homework, but remember, I'm telling you, this is a moving target, right? If something happens in the economy or Trump says something weird or whatever, like it might be 50 grand less, right? So let's factor in the worst case scenario. Today, right? I think you're somewhere here, right? But you're not ready to put your house on the market today. You're not ready for 3 months, right? So I want to anticipate what's going to happen in 3 months. Is the market moving up or is it moving down? And you can look at the data, right? Are prices climbing or are prices leveling off or are they falling, right? So now you're future pacing. You can say, hey, prices are just kind of flat. So it's safe to say maybe we're still here, but let's say prices fall 5%. This is the net sheet on that, right? And so can you make the move at this price? I'm shooting for this price, but can you make the move at this price?
So how low should you go?
How low should you go? Right?
Because I bet you need some kind of cushion room.
Give them a range, bro. So that's where you look at the data. How low should you go? Is you want to look at the data and see where the prices have gone in the last, right? Like if they're not ready for 3 months, well, look at the last 3 months. Have prices gone up 5%, leveled off, went down? You can see the data in the last 3 months and see what the shift was, right? It's not always down. Sometimes it's flat. Sometimes it's up still.
And the great thing about it, guys, I think is like if you sign a listing, now and you're not listing for 3 months, well, you're going to have this conversation with them when you put it on the market, right? You're going to go right back to this. Okay, cool. I know we looked at the net sheet 3 months ago. Now we're ready to list. Now let's see what the market's doing. Let me show you the data from the active, the pending. Let me show you this data. Now that we're ready to put it on the market.
Yeah.
Right? Remember, you already secured the listing. Now the second step is now we secured the listing. First step. Second step is what are we going to put it on the market at? This is a whole other conversation. You got to do this whole comp thing with them at that time.
Now, a lot of the listings that I'm doing right now are being pushed, not being pushed, but we're making recommendations in regards to how the house looks, right? There's changes that are being done. So for example, the one that I just picked up yesterday, right? We're doing $17,000 work, right? Would it even make sense for us to go even do those mods and just say, hey, listen, because we are dropping the numbers. If we waited 3 weeks to do these mods, that's costing you 17 grand. We know that the market is on a declining shift. Would it make even sense for us to even have those types of conversations?
Yeah, I mean, because even if the market declines, right? Let's say you guys spend 17 grand to fix up the kitchen, but then the market declines. Well, then if your kitchen wasn't fixed, it's probably still 17 grand less than that, right? So like because you did that, you saved yourself some money, right? It's all about return on investment, right? So I would be careful on how much you spend, right? And I would only improve things that are actually going to move the needle forward, regardless of where the market's at, right? So like, am I doing a custom barbecue in the back? No, right? Not at all, because it doesn't matter where the market's at, you're not going to get all your money back. But painting the place, and it's old paint, now you got new paint, that's going to improve the value regardless if the market's high or low, right? Someone will pay more because it's freshly painted. So things like floors, carpets, sprucing up the kitchen, sprucing up the bathrooms and stuff like that. Those are like evergreen type of modifications, right? Those are the basics, right? Where you go from a B to an A now. And now you're in a different bracket, right? So just be careful on what you recommend. Stick to the basics, right? Clean and presentable, right? Unless you're trying to really get them from one bracket to another, like it's a fixer and now we're going to remodel the whole thing. Well, that's going to improve your value no matter what, right? But when the house is already decent, you got to just be careful, right? Like stick to the basic checklist. Don't go anything custom or anything like that, right? And especially in this market, we're shifting. Guys, I know we went through a lot. I hope you guys learned some stuff. Run your scenarios by me. When you got properties, I could sit down with you guys and help you go through these. But hopefully you guys can use this info now and go out there and prep yourselves, set the right expectations with your sellers and, get these listings and actually sell them, right? And do not be afraid to have these tough conversations. In fact, be afraid to not have the tough conversations because then you're going to waste time, waste people's money, waste your own money, right? If you're not going to do these things, don't get listings, right? Stick to buyers, right?
It's what you told us like a month back, give them the range, and when you're giving them the net sheets, give the lowest net sheet and the highest that really is working now.
Yeah.
Like they're very clear, like if this is a low point, if you really want to go on the market, it's very easy for you to decide.
Yeah. Because if your seller is doing this, well, I'll end with this. If your seller is like, I can only sell if all the moon and the stars line up and I hit this top end of the market and I get this exact price, otherwise the numbers don't make sense and it's just not enough for me to make the move, I would think twice about taking that listing, right? Because sometimes we're in that sales mentality, right? Like, oh, I want the listing. Yeah, let's just roll the dice, right? But really, you're rolling the dice on yourself. You're rolling the dice on the team. You don't want a reputation of taking listings that don't sell, right? Because you want to take a listing and it gets sold and you're able to now go present a body of work and showcase, hey, look, these are my last 10 listings. Out of my last 10 listings, 9 of them sold, right? There was one of them that fell off. Okay. Happens, but 9 of them sold and the seller was happy with the price, right? Meanwhile, hundreds of listings are canceling right now. All right. So always go worst case scenario. Don't oversell anything. Don't overpromise stuff. Have those tough conversations up front. And you'll be all right. And if you're not sure, guys, run it by me, right? Just like Rob did. This is where now we got to work together. Rob called me. Hey, I'm meeting with the seller. I can get the listing. This is exactly what he told me. The seller wants to sell. He likes me. I can get this listing, but I just want you to look at it to see if we should take it on. And I ran the numbers and I was like, look, if you're going to take on this listing, it needs to be at this price. If not, do not take it on. We don't want that listing. All right. And then he got it signed and then he got the price that's more realistic. So I feel good about him moving forward now on that listing. All right. All right, guys. That's all I got. Guys, let's clap it up. Thank you.
Enrique,
I'll get you on that buyer.
that seller says he doesn't want to sell unless he can get 1525.
1525.